Wow. Um, I expected something for Halloween set, but this is kind of creeping me a little bit too. Hey, it's me, Scotty J, host of this very special Trailer Trash TV Halloween. As you can see behind me, when you think of Halloween, you think of trick-or-treating. You think of the classic monsters, as you know, whether it be Frankenstein, whether it be Dracula, whether it be King Kong or Godzilla. All the movie and TV characters as a kid that just scared the crap out of you. Well, Trailer Trash TV for Halloween this particular time around didn't want to go the traditional route because in a lot of ways, there's some things that are going to always be far more scarier than horror movies, than the horror movie characters. And that one thing is reality. So I'll say right off the bat, if you expected a traditional type of Halloween special, you may want to flip to another channel and find that movie that you want to see. But if you want to see something different this Halloween, something that'll make you think, you're on the right channel. So with that being said, you have found, dear viewers, the Trailer Trash TV Red Scare Halloween. What I mean by a Red Scare Halloween, think back to, if you're a younger viewer watching this, think back to something called the McCarthy era. All the communist scares, all the, well, Red Scares, if you will. Paranoia hit an all-time high at that time. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be showing some classic educational films dealing with the birth and inception of not only communism, but the Cold War and the fear that was brought to Americans at the time. How you can tell a communist and what ramifications were to be if you were a, God forbid, communist sympathizer. So with that being said, we're going to kick into a Trailer Trash TV Red Scare Halloween. Check it out. I'll be right back.
This is the Kremlin, citadel of Russian communism. Looking at Russia, we might see it as a country to be studied, as we study other nations of the world. Yet we know that Russia today is regarded as a grave threat to our nation, to our freedom, to the peace of the world. Why so? What makes it a threat? Looking closer, we see a clue. Public display of giant portraits of communist leaders. These leaders, by their actions, have caused the world to stand guard. Here, in Russia, you see the reason why so many nations are building up their defenses. Here, in Russia, you see the reason why we are spending billions of dollars in defense production. Why your family is paying the highest taxes in our history. The leaders of Russia tell us their only concern is the defense of their own nation. Is this so? Or are they ambitious for world conquest? Question. A question of communism. Ever hear of Karl Marx? In his mind, communism was born more than 100 years ago. He looked at the world and saw men as divided into two classes, workers and capitalists. In the Communist Manifesto, he called upon the workers, the proletarians, to rise up and overthrow their capitalistic masters. He cried, "The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries, unite." This was the promise and the challenge of communism. In Russia, the Tsar was the government. To support the wealthy aristocracy, millions of peasants toiled in virtual slavery. The Cossacks, dreaded police of the Tsar, enforced tyrannical laws. Here was fertile ground for the ideas of communism. For here, indeed, the people had nothing to lose but their chains. the chains of the imperial government. In 1914, the Tsar sent his troops into the war that swept Europe. For more than 2 years they fought. While at home, people suffered from shortages, brought about the despotism and corruption of the imperial government. The people grew rebellious. Only a strong army could sustain the Tsar in power. But revolution was preached on the battlefield, too, to an army broken with corruption. Inevitably, the Russian army surrendered. And with the defeated army returning under the banners of revolution, the imperial government fell and revolution reigned. The chains were broken, and in violence was born the government of the proletarians. But a government needs leaders. Ever hear of Nikolai Lenin? He was the first leader of communist Russia. Leon Trotsky was another. Lenin lived but a few years, and out of the vicious struggle for power that followed his death, Joseph Stalin emerged as undisputed leader. Here was a new face, but in the background was an old one, Karl Marx. He established the ultimate aim of communism as world revolution. And the rulers of communist Russia, while firmly establishing their authority at home, created an international organization to stir up revolution throughout the world. Communism was on the march. Stalin was in the Kremlin. But what of the people? The proletarians who had fought to win a new world. Their new world might look promising, but although the land had been taken away from the capitalists, the workers didn't get it. Under communism, virtually everything belongs to the state. The individual has little right to own property or to plan his own life. He's told where to work with his employer. Little freedom to leave his job or seek a better one. Whereas we believe, and our religions teach, that the individual is all important, communism denies religion and debases the individual to a part of the vast machine that powers the state. Children are taken early and molded to fit the machine. Here is no search for truth. The government writes the textbooks, and the children are taught to accept communism and their fate without question. The Kremlin runs all elections, and the outcome is always the same. If anyone dares to disagree, he's given a speedy trial without benefit of jury. Such traitors may be immediately executed or sent off to prison. The proletarians have nothing to but their chains. They have a world to win. Although the people of Russia gained little, the rulers gained mightily in power. They built up a giant war machine, looking forward to the day when their flag would fly over the entire world. Then came the rise of Nazi Germany, another power bent on world conquest. The two nations joined forces, and Russia, believing itself safe from aggression, launched an invasion of Finland and other neighboring nations. For the first time, the world learned that the communists were no longer waiting for world revolution, but were now resorting to outright military aggression to extend their power. After the Nazis turned on their former allies, we supplied Russia with immense quantities of military equipment to wage war against our common foe. And how did Russia come out of the war? In 1917, at the time of the revolution, Russia was already a land of vast area. Soon after the end of World War II, Russia had occupied many new territories, bringing additional millions of people under communist control, and serving notice that Soviet Russia was now a world power to be reckoned with. United with Russia in war, we strove to preserve that unity in peace. We helped organize the United Nations in which the nations of the world have mutually pledged to cooperate in fostering world peace and progress. Andrei Gromyko signed for Russia. But in the first post-war Italian elections, the communists created disorder in an attempt to gain control of the government. Once more, the world was reminded that basic in the idea of communism is the plan of world revolution, and that Russian communism has stepped beyond that plan to achieve world domination through aggression. In Indochina and Malaya, communist aggression has incited rebellion against established government. In France, communist aggression has fomented strikes against essential industries in attempts to discredit the free government. In Iran, the communists have incited rioting and have preached hatred and distrust of the Western nations. In Eastern Germany, they have openly opposed the West. In China, the communists have established their own puppet government. In Korea, communist aggression has come into actual combat with forces of the United Nations. And with the most deadly of all weapons available to the Russians, no peoples in the world can feel secure against this aggression. How are we meeting this challenge? Yes, one way is by helping the free world fight starvation and poverty and suffering, conditions that pave the way for communist infiltration. We are also supplying equipment for the free nations to develop their own resources and raise their living standards. Another way we are meeting the challenge is by military alliance with some of the other free nations for mutual aid in opposing direct communist aggression. And we are building up our own military defense. But do these preparations mean that we have abandoned hope for peace? No. In the United Nations, we are continually seeking a workable plan for living in peace with communist Russia. Because we want peace, but we do not want this. We believe in freedom. Freedom, born of the conviction that every person is a child of God and is therefore of supreme worth. For these people, for ourselves, for everyone, we want freedom, not tyranny.
Okay, so now that that was Communism, a Cornet film from 1952. And, just watching it today, you can see in a lot of ways how some stuff really quite possibly hasn't changed all that much, and it's disturbing to think so, but it's the way things seem to be going in some places. Again, you're watching Trailer Trash TV Halloween Red Scare Special. Wherever you're watching this, if you're watching it online, if you're watching it on MySpace, or if you're watching it on your local cable system, please, please, please let me know what you think. sjtrailertrash@yahoo.com. And let me know, like I said, what you think of this. Let me know what you remember from the McCarthy era, from the Red Scares, if you were growing up as a kid, what your family did and how everything was handled in your time. With that being said, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with a, actually somewhat of a military training film, as it were. It comes across as such a little bit, but check it out. We'll be right back, and once again, you're watching the Trailer Trash TV Halloween Red Scare Special. Stay tuned.
New York. I'm George Rock of Caterville. It's my responsibility as a parent to protect my family. That's why I have one. In Western New York.
I am Mrs. Angus McNeil, town of Hamburg. We also have one, as insurance against a day we pray will never come.
In Central New York.
Hi, I am Paul Wheeler. and I built one for my family for $118.
In the New York City area.
I am Ralph Wells of New York City. I have one, and I consider it a good investment.
Home fallout shelters are being built in all sections of the state. For free professional help in planning one for your family, contact your local Civil Defense Director or write to the New York State Civil Defense Commission in Albany.
Welcome back. You're right in the middle of a Trailer Trash TV Red Scare Halloween. I'm your host, Scotty J. And like I had said before the break, this one kind of comes across as, oh, God forbid what the military will try to tell us to do and why we shouldn't do certain things, et cetera, et cetera. This film is from 1947, something called Don't Be a Sucker. It's with an S. Very intriguing film. And in my opinion, it mirrors a lot of stuff that is happening even today as we speak. So with that being said, this is Don't Be a Sucker, 1947. Check it out, and I'll give you a few more of my 2 cents worth when we come back.
Henry here got on the train with $200. He couldn't see any harm in a friendly game of cards. What if the other men were strangers? And take Joe Collins. He's got a nice wife at home. But he met this girl at the bar, and she looked after the first couple of drinks. There's a good old-fashioned word for people like this. We call them suckers. And there are other people. People who stay up nights figuring out how to take away what they've got. There are all kinds of games. Mike here, for instance. He's got everything in me. He's young, he's healthy, got a job. And he's got plenty of food. Big factories to make things a man can use. Big cities to do the business of a big company. And people, lots of people. Enough to work the farm and build the factories, dig the mines, run the business. All kinds of people. People from different countries with different religions, different colored skins. Free people. They can live together and work together and build America together because they're free. Free to vote, to say what they please, go to their own churches, to pick their own jobs. Yeah, Mike's got something, all right. He's got America. But there are guys who stay up nights figuring out how to take that away from him.
I happen to know the facts. Now, friends, I'm just an average American. But I'm an American, and some of the things I see in this country of ours make my blood boil. I see people with foreign money. I see Negroes holding jobs that belong to me and you. Now, I ask you, if we allow this thing to go on, what's going to become of us real Americans?
I've heard this kind of talk before, but I never expected to hear it in America.
This fellow seems to know what he's talking about.
What are we real Americans going to do about it? You'll find it right here in this little pamphlet. The truth about Negroes and foreigners. The truth about the Catholic Church.
Do you believe in that kind of talk?
I don't know, makes pretty good sense to me.
And I tell you, friends, we'll never be able to call this country our own until it's a country without. Without what? Yeah, without what? Without Negroes. Without alien foreigners. Without Catholics. Without Freemasons. You know these people.
What's wrong with the Masons? I'm a Mason. Hey, that fellow's talking about me.
And that makes a difference, doesn't it?
These are your enemies. These are the people who are trying to take over our country. Now you know them. You know what they stand for. And it's up to you and me to fight them. Fight them and destroy them before they destroy us. Thank you.
Before he said Masons, you were ready to agree with him.
Well, yes, but he was talking about... What about those other people?
But in this country, we have no other people. We are American people.
What about you? You aren't American, are you?
I was born in Hungary, but now I am an American citizen. And I have seen what this kind of talk can do. I saw it in Berlin.
What were you doing there?
I was a professor at the university. I heard the same words we have heard today. But I was a fool then. I thought Nazis were crazy people, stupid fanatics. But unfortunately, it was not so. You see, they knew that they were not strong enough to conquer a unified country. So they split Germany into small groups. They used prejudice as a practical weapon to cripple the nation. Of course, that was not easy to do. They had to work hard to do it. You see, we human beings are not born with prejudices. Always they are made for us, made by someone who wants something. Remember that when you hear this kind of talk. Somebody is going to get something out of it, and it isn't going to be you. This is not classroom theory. I saw it happen. I saw it first in Berlin in 1932. 5 young men that I knew were standing in the crowd listening to the Nazi speaker. Eric was a Catholic. Anton, a student of mine, was a Jew. Heinrich owned a small hardware store. Karl was a farmer. And Hans was an unemployed metal worker.
To all Aryan Germans, I say it is time you inherited the nation which rightfully belongs to you. To you alone belongs the glorious destiny of the greater Germany. The Nazi Party will provide land for the farmer, work for the worker, and profits for the small businessman. Who is getting these things now? The Jew. The Jew who has stolen our nation and our birthright. Who makes all the money and takes all our jobs? The Jew! He must be shunned. He must be ostracized. He must be eliminated. And the Catholics. We don't want our great nation run by a foreign church. We Germans will know what to do with these people when the time comes. They and their faith must be destroyed. Then there are the Freemasons. In Germany, we have no place for secret societies. There will be only one society, and that is the Nazi Party. There will be no secrecy about that in the new greater Germany.
One by one, he attacked each minority and he split them off one from the other. These men were all fellow Germans when they came here today. Now they were split into rival groups, suspicious of each other, hating each other. They were being swindled, all of them. But the man who was really being fooled was Hans. He was pure German, according to Nazi standards. To him they promised everything, and he fell for it. That's how Hans became a Superman. They gave him a uniform and they pumped up his ego. He wasn't just a little fellow out of work anymore. He was a member of the master race. Hans and thousands of others like him, all playing a sucker's game. They gambled with other people's liberty, and of course they lost their own. A nation of suckers. Hitler needed these people. There was lots of work to be done. There were trade unions to be smashed, because unions were organized and might offer resistance. There were many political parties in Germany. These the Nazis destroyed. They were determined to smash every organization where people might band together and resist them. There were Jews to be beaten and killed. The Jews were not powerful, but they were a convenient excuse for all the nation's ills. And besides, a Nazi party member could not take over this man's store. Hundreds of Catholics were put in jail because the Catholic Church had strength and could resist the Nazi drive for power. They had split the nation into 100 pieces, and then one by one, they had destroyed the pieces. Over these broken pieces, the Nazis rode into power. One party, one nation, one religion. These men had won their struggle for power. They now ruled all of Germany. But still they had trouble with their oldest and most persistent enemy, the truth. They found that truth does not die easily, and so they decided to abolish truth. One great source of truth is literature, so they burned books, 20 million of them. Many great men in Germany who were spokesmen for truth were jailed or driven from their country. Teachers, writers, scientists. Education was discouraged. In 5 years, college attendance dropped 53%. It was forbidden to listen to a British radio program or read an American newspaper. In Nazi Germany, you had to get your information from Dr. Goebbels. He knew what was best for you. The church was one force in Germany still strong enough to proclaim the truth in public. This Catholic priest was arrested the following day on charges of immorality. The Protestant church also continued to try and fight for truth. The Nazis put this man in a concentration camp. There were others who spoke for truth, and I am proud to say that educators were among them.
And what, may I ask, is an Aryan? I don't know myself. But let us see what our present so-called authorities have to say about him. They say he is tall, slender, blue-eyed, and blonde. There is no Aryan race. And more important, there is no master race. There are people who may find these ideas convenient, but science cannot support them. There is no scientific proof that there's any correlation between a man's racial characteristics and his native ability or character. In all racial groups, we find the same range of potentialities. We find idiots and geniuses. We find criminals and philanthropists. We must judge each man as an individual and not by the color of his skin or his eyes or by the length of his nose. Come in, gentlemen. It's comfortable. And remember that there is no master race. That is a scientific truth. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying.
And so for all practical purposes, truth had been abolished in Germany. A lot of my German friends wondered what had hit them. How did it happen? Where did it start? It started right here. And this was where it could have been stopped. If those people had stood together, if they had protected each other, they could have resisted the Nazi threat. Together they would have been strong. But once they allowed themselves to be split apart, they were helpless. When that first minority lost out, everybody lost out. They made the mistake of gambling with other people's freedom. Now let's see how those bets paid off. Karl the farmer was gambling on a better life for himself. What he got was extra hours of back-breaking work, as much as 100 hours a week. He was forced to stay on his land and produce what he was told to produce, because now Hitler was preparing for war. For Heinrich, who owned a hardware store, the bet didn't pay off either. 104,000 small businesses were closed in 2 years. And for Hans, conditions hadn't improved any. He had a job now in the munitions factory, but he worked long hours for little pay. The working conditions grew increasingly bad. And even though he didn't like the job, he wasn't permitted to leave it. And when Hitler decided the time was right, Germany went to war. Not by declaring war, but by a carefully prepared sneak attack. Once again, Hitler needed Hans to do his dirty work. Hans was an expert at brutality this time, and Hitler had decided to use Hans and his brutality against other peoples, the Czechs, the Poles, the French, the Russians. But in the crucial test of war, Hitler's race theories didn't pay off. His pure-blooded supermen were defeated by the mongrel armies he despised, by the British of El Alamein. By the Russians at Stalingrad. Then on D-Day by American soldiers of every color and religion, who smashed across the Normandy beaches and drove on through to the heart of Germany. For the misguided Germans who had swallowed the Nazi bait, the Nazi game did not pay off. The continent of Europe was strewn with millions of German bodies, pure Aryan bodies. Karl, the farmer, was left in the snow outside of Moscow. Heinrich stayed in Italy at Salerno. And Hans, who was going to rule the world, got only a little patch of Normandy that he could call his own.
We must never let that happen to us or to our country. We must never let ourselves be divided by race or color or religion, because in this country we all belong to minority groups. I was born in Hungary. You are a Mason. These are minorities. And then you belong to other minority groups too. You are a farmer. You have blue eyes. You go to the Methodist Church. Your right to belong to these minorities is a precious thing. You have a right to be what you are and say what you think, because here we have personal freedom. We have liberty. And these are not just fancy words. This is a practical and priceless way of living. But we must work at it. We must guard everyone's liberty, or we can lose our own. If we allow any minority to lose its freedom by persecution or by prejudice, we are threatening our own freedom. And this is not simply an idea. This is good, hard common sense. You see, here in America is not a question whether we tolerate minorities. America is minorities. And that means you and me.
So let's not be suckers. We must not allow the freedom or dignity of any man to be threatened by any act or word. Let's be selfish about it. Let's forget about we and they. Let's think about us.
Don't be a sucker. All right. Blatant propaganda. It's the only two words I can come up with that can be assimilated with this particular film we just saw. You know, there's a lot of people saying a lot of things even today with the way things are being run, for lack of a better term. And some of the stuff in the film, you may see strong similarities to stuff that's being expressed today. But yet, like I said, you're watching a Trailer Trash TV Halloween Red Scare special. And please, I had said it before, but I'm going to say it again, and I'll keep saying it. Let me know what you think. sjtrailertrash@yahoo.com is the email. And in the future, go ahead and either click on Google Video, that's video.google.com, or you can click on veo.com, veoh.com, where you can see Trailer Trash TV 24/7. And if those are too confusing, go ahead and go to Trailer Trash TV's website. That's trailertrashtv.150m.com. Click on the View Now Trailer Trash TV 24/7, and it'll bring you right to either of those two sites. So If you don't have time to watch it on cable, go to the internet. That's the wonderful thing about cyberspace now. Trailer Trash TV and cyberspace. God, is that disturbing? So with that being said, we're going to come back with our last block, and I got some very powerful, hard-hitting films in this last block. So stay tuned. Trailer Trash TV, Red Scare Halloween. We'll be right back.
If an enemy attacked, deadly radioactive fallout would follow. Would you, your family, and livestock be protected? This New York State farmer has the answer.
Civil Defense helped us with the plans of the shelter we have in the basement of our home. And here in the barn, we have extra feed and water for the livestock and have sealed up the opening. And we have extra bales of hay to cover doors and windows.
Civil Defense will provide experts to help you plan farm fallout protection. This service is free. Contact your local director or the New York State Civil Defense Commission.
Okay, I just been reminded before I go any further, I got some thank yous to give. First and foremost, I have to thank Northwest Community Television, where all this is being taped, for providing the facilities once again. And I also have to thank my, God, I hate to say it, my esteemed director, Tim McCoy, who has, who has helped me out with Trailer Trash the last, oh God, it's been over a year now. Seems like several more. But with that being said, I also have to thank EarthStation1.com for providing the footage that you've seen in this, not only this special, but the follow-up special that you'll be seeing shortly. Going into this last block, these are probably the two most powerful films on this special. The first one, called The Responsibilities of Citizenship. This one was released right in the peak of the McCarthy era in 1955. And following that up, this one may bother some of you. It's nothing graphic, but it's a very strong message being sent. It's something called What You Should Know About Biological Warfare. And the reason I'm playing this now is simply due to the fact for all the stuff that's happening, well, for lack of a better term, overseas right now. A lot of people aren't in favor of the things that are happening now overseas and at home, but some things need to be presented. So something for you to think about, what you should know about biological warfare. And with that, I'm going to sign off on this particular edition, this particular installment of Trailer Trash TV, a Red Scare Halloween special. Have fun, be safe, and if you're out trick-or-treating, be careful with the candy. With that, I'll see you later.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, warm the waves of grace.
When our founding fathers established this republic, they created a political and economic system unique among nations, a system which has led the United States to the very pinnacle in wealth and in world leadership. This series of programs is being presented to help all of us understand better our advantages under our American way of life.
For today's topic, let's join now a group of young people at the National Education Program Workshop in Searcy, Arkansas. At the classroom lectern is Dr. Clifton L. Gaines, Jr., noted young historian.
We're discussing today one of the most precious gifts on earth, American citizenship. American citizenship is a combination of freedom and responsibilities. The privileges of freedom come to us as a heritage from many generations of pioneering Americans. The responsibilities must be developed by each new generation, by each individual citizen. Some of you may be asking yourselves, why should we be bothered with developing citizenship responsibilities? Well, there are many reasons. One of the primary reasons is that great principles do not live from generation to generation without being nurtured, without being kept vigorously alive. Unless we understand and work effectively for the principles upon which our American way of life is founded, the structure will crumble and our heritage of freedom will perish. Another primary reason for the development of citizenship responsibility is that we are living in an era marked by the growth of socialism. To a substantial degree, in one form or another, socialism has spread the shadow of human regimentation over most of the nations of the earth, and the shadow is encroaching upon our own liberty. A third major reason for accepting our citizenship responsibilities and working at them is the presence within America of socialists and communist propagandists dedicated to the establishment of a new order. The communist fifth columnists among us are working for world dictatorship. To accomplish this, their strategy is to undermine the confidence of our people in the American system and the principles on which it stands. The socialists among us seek to bring about a gradual change in our system by gradually destroying the principle of the private ownership of property and substituting the socialist principle of government ownership. Now let's be practical for a moment. Is the American way of life worth bothering about? That is, with a viewpoint of self-interest. Well, let's see. We know that under the stars and stripes we have more freedom than do civilized people on earth. Our freedom stems from the fact that America is a republic, founded on a constitution, and dedicated to the principle of democracy and the worth of the individual. The people rule. But some philosophers tell us that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. In other words, food, the material things of life, are dear to the heart. Let's look briefly at the material blessings of America. Our nation, although containing only 6% of the land area and 7% of the population of the world, produces 42% of the world's wealth. We know that the average American in all walks of life has a living standard twice as high as the best in Europe, where socialism is widespread, and from 5 to 10 times better than in the communist countries, such as Russia and China. And if we remember our previous lessons, we know that this economic abundance is possible in America because incentives for progress and the other factors built into our dynamic private enterprise system have enabled us to utilize our resources to the fullest extent. So we do have good sound reasons, both abstractly and in self-interest, for developing citizenship responsibilities towards safeguarding the basic principles of our way of life. But let's put the full challenge in a few words. The world is caught in an era of socialist expansion. Most of the nations are affected, and America is a target. In fact, the #1 target of both the socialist and the communist. If we permit our great system to crumble through the apathy of our citizenship, we shall lose not only our freedom, but our prosperity and our still brighter future. What then must we do as citizens? What are our obligations of citizenship? #1, to understand the American way of life and what makes it tick. For instance, we should understand that our form of government is a republic, not a pure democracy. And we should clearly understand the difference. Who can tell us the difference in a few words?
A pure democracy establishes majority rule with a minority overrun.
Yes, it does. On the other hand, our republic is based on a constitution which protects minority rights.
In our republic, we have representative government, not sheer majority rule.
And isn't its authority divided into 3 branches, the executive, legislative, and judicial?
Yes, it is. And it's important, too, that in our republic, authority is surrounded by an ingenious system of checks and balances that prevents autocratic or dictatorial rule. That is, if we maintain the Constitution as our basic law. Well, that briefly sums up our political structure. What about our economic structure?
Our economic system is based on 3 major principles: private ownership of property, the profit motive, and the competitive open market.
Yes, those are the 3 great pillars. Private ownership diffuses the wealth and economic power over the very widest area, over our whole population, and makes our people independent, masters of their own lives. The profit motive, as we have learned, is active in all human behavior. In our economic system, the profit motive is the incentive for new development and constantly expanding production. And the open competitive market is where the consumer is king. It is this factor in our economy which brings about better goods and lower prices, as one company after another tries to outdo its competitors and get the consumer's business. These are some of the basic facts about our own system which every citizen should know. But now let us go on to additional obligations of American citizenship. Number 2, to understand communism, its basic godless philosophy, its goal of world conquest, its insidious tactics, and its cunning strategy. Number 3 on our list of obligations is to understand socialism and all the cunning disguises in which it presents itself to the American people. Our 4th obligation is to understand propaganda techniques as used by both the communist and the socialist. This is a very vitally important need. Thousands of good, loyal Americans have been duped into actually aiding the communist, simply because they did not look carefully before they joined some high-sounding venture, or before they more or less blindly advocated some course of action. Number 5 in the list of American citizenship obligations is to take an interest in your public schools and in your private and public-financed colleges, to take an interest in what's being taught and how it's being taught, and to take an interest in the welfare of the teachers who contribute so much to the development of America. Number 6, in addition to voting in all elections, become active in government. Run for local, state, and national office, or help select capable people of the highest integrity to serve. Be constantly vocal on all local and national political issues. Tell your representatives in Congress, or even the President himself, what you think is the best course on issues that come before the public. Number 7, strive constantly for spiritual growth. We, as individuals, can push the world along toward mankind's highest destiny if each of us will make the welfare of his fellow man his first concern, and if each of us will apply the principles of God's truth to our political and economic affairs. And lastly, obligation number 8. Dedicate a part of your everyday life to the bringing of these requirements of American citizenship to the attention of fellow students, fellow workers, neighbors, and friends. Is it too much to ask that we fulfill these obligations of citizenship? If we think so, we should read again the history of the founding of this nation and consider the hardships of the people who made possible our freedom. They felt that no challenge was too great if freedom was at stake. That spirit carried them on. It created for us the foundation of our great heritage. We have seen it flare up and burn brightly in every national emergency, on the battlefields and at home. The socialists, the communists, and their followers would like to see the American spirit extinguished. If each of us will rise to the occasion, if every citizen, young and old, will accept the challenge of his citizenship, then the socialists and communists and their followers will not prevail, and America will go on toward the fulfillment of her great world destiny. This concludes the American Adventure Series. Our next series of classes in the American way of life will be announced soon. For now, class dismissed.
The American Adventure Series is a production of the National Education Program, Searcy, Arkansas. Dr. George S. Benson, director. Dr. Clinton L. Gaines, Jr. was our instructor. This is a continuing series based on the unique political and economic system which has made America great. Watch for the next presentation of the American Adventure.
as a nation, we are justly the people who produce these where they live. In event of wars, may attempt to destroy or disable our people and our production by striking directly at the civilian population. Denied the products of our farms and factories, we could not wage war on any front. We can be attacked in spite of our excellent defenses. Attacks may be made in many ways, with bombs or with biological weapons. This might be one form of biological warfare. But you may have heard.
There's a new poison. 1 ounce can kill all the people in the United States.
Germ warfare can wipe out an entire city.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
Biological warfare? What do they expect me to do about it? It's not my headache.
You're wrong. You had better find out the facts about biological warfare, or BW. It can be aimed at you in your home, or at work, at your food crops, your livestock. Biological weapons can be divided into 3 groups: germs, toxins, and plant growth regulators. Some germs cause cholera, others cause typhoid fever, plague, and such diseases. Toxins are special poisons produced by other germs. They do the harm in diseases like food poisoning and diphtheria. Special plant growth regulators can destroy food crops, just as weed killer can destroy weeds. The public health nurse and the many other members of our public health system have been fighting nature's biological attacks for years. We have proved that our health and medical systems check the spread of infectious diseases. Our livestock and crops are guarded by a nationwide network of federal, state, and local agencies and experts. Government regulations assure the purity of many food products. But BW attacks can be made in spite of our health safety systems. Aerosols containing disease germs could be used. These aerosols could be spread over large areas. Submarines could release aerosols near coastal cities. Specially designed germ-carrying bombs could be dropped. Enemy agents could contaminate the city water supply. How can we protect ourselves from BW attacks? Keep yourself and your family clean. Don't help germs by making things easy for them. Germs have trouble living in clean places. Enroll in a Red Cross home nursing course. Then if sickness does come to you, you'll know what to do. Always report sickness promptly.
And doctor, Mary's temperature is over 100.
Good morning. Here's the news. Civil Defense Headquarters announced today that the sharp increase in the number of cases of illness during the last few days have led authorities to suspect that a biological warfare attack may have taken place. As yet, the cause of this outbreak has not been identified. Civil Defense Health Authorities recommend that you should take the following precautions.
If such an announcement is made in your city, don't give way to fear. Just remember that scientists would already be working to control the outbreak. Probably some of the people in your neighborhood would become sick. Reports of the disease would start pouring into health and medical authorities. The number and location of cases would be plotted on a map of the area. Scientists would go to work immediately to identify the cause of the disease. Meanwhile, the outbreak would take on a definite pattern. There are important things you can do in your home if you are told a biological warfare attack has taken place. Be careful what you eat and drink. Canned and bottled goods are safe, but scrub them before opening. Packaged foods in cupboards and refrigerators are probably not contaminated. Boil or cook all exposed food before eating. Water used for drinking or washing after an attack must be boiled. Wash all contaminated garments thoroughly to remove germs or toxins. If your doctor recommends sending a member of your family to the hospital, cooperate. Local health and medical authorities would distribute instructions so that the outbreak of the disease could be controlled. Follow instructions closely. If you are called upon for a blood sample, don't hesitate. Blood samples would be extremely important in helping the scientists identify the germs or poisons. Authorities would identify the cause of the disease as soon as possible. The recovery of those already sick would be speeded up with the use of modern drugs. Mass inoculations might be necessary to keep the disease from spreading. This would require the cooperation of everyone. Remember, BW attacks food crops, livestock, and people. Our health and medical systems are the foundations of our defense against biological warfare. Our food supply is guarded by a nationwide network of federal, state, and local agencies and experts. If we are attacked with biological warfare, health and medical authorities will tell you what to do so that the disease could be brought under control. Cooperate with the authorities. Above all, don't listen to scare talk, rumors, or myths. Get a copy of this official booklet at the first opportunity. Read it and remember it. Do your part, and we can successfully combat biological warfare.